Tom, how are you?
Doing pretty good, you man. Um, Glad to see all this actual Smart Summit videos going around.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. What have you seen so far?
The AI driver seems like everybody seems to be excited about the circulation of his video, and obviously Omar being in the back seat. Um, my wife her jaw dropped to the floor.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear more about it. Omar is in listening mode right now. He'll probably come up later on. What did you notice in AI driver's video?
Um, it seems to be a little more intuitive, at least where he's at. My parking lot drives, I call them parking lot shenanigans. With this update, it seems to be there's very little shenanigans from what I get. I know it was nobody was there, it was dark, but I mean you had to get out there and try it for yourself as soon as you get the update, right? So I can't wait to see more videos with there being more uh cars on the road.
Omar, how's the ass?
Hey, it's some of the best ass I've ever seen. Um, and I hope everyone gets some ass soon because it really is incredible to see your Tesla moving around driverlessly for the first time. Smoothly, naturally, human like. You can even get in the back seat or have a passenger in your car and have the car driverlessly move around. And this time it actually works, unlike the version they released 5 years ago. So 5 years of work makes a big difference. I'm actually using the software right now. I'm recording a video. But not only is the actually smart sum in there, the driving model has been upgraded to 12.5.3 from 12.5.1. We were thinking maybe we were going to see a 12.5.2. They gave us 12.5.3. And it's significantly more human-like and has significantly fewer interventions from what I've seen. I haven't had any interventions of any kind so far, doing a number of different drives.
All right, if anybody else in the audience has this update, please request to speak. I'm at a coffee shop right now, so I can't really make ASS jokes, but if somebody else wants to, you're welcome. It's in the public where no one understands, where no one knows what this update is about. So Omar has it, AI driver has it. Does anyone else have it?
I mean, it looks like it's early access program at this point. If things go well on the early access program, it'll probably continue to expand. Understand.
Okay, that's good. All right. Well, I mean, hopefully this goes out, and when About Tesla comes up, maybe he can give us an update on how the rollout is going. Hustle Town, what else is on your radar?
For me, I'm just on day 8 of not having my Model X. It's in the service collision center. Um, maybe 2 weeks. So that's all. I'm just anxious. I can't wait to get my car back.
What's wrong with it?
We had a distracted driver in a Nissan bump into me, just hit me slightly, going about 10 miles an hour. So everybody was okay, but the car was still functional, still able to use FSD, all this other stuff. But now we're gonna get her rear end fixed. So maybe one day my Model X can show off its ass. You know what I mean?
Do you think this update will lead to an increase in take rate, Omar?
Absolutely. I was just at LAX last night using it, and the car drove by some woman that was walking up to her car, and I saved it on the dash cam footage. You can see her do a double take when she walks by the car and sees that there's no driver. So absolutely, when people see driverless Teslas moving around in parking lots, they're going to realize FSD is here. It can operate a car driverlessly.
How about Tesla? How are you?
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing well. How is the update rollout going?
Well, great news, as you all know. This is something we've been waiting for and predicting it would happen soon. Right now, it's only going to early access group, but hopefully it will go beyond that soon.
What about, is there any other update that's rolling out still?
Not much activity. There are still some installations going on, but there haven't been much activity since last week. So it's been slow for like hardware 3, for example, is not no new waves. So I don't know, maybe holidays or something, but or maybe they're just focused on this S release now. We'll see.
What's kind of the feedback that you've heard from your followers? I'm sure you're getting a lot of replies about these updates. And what's the feedback that you've been hearing about the latest update that's rolling out?
Well, very few have received it, and it's mostly, the early access groups or YouTubers. You've probably seen some videos. So Omar posted his, and there are some other videos that are pretty interesting right now. So, like, I was impressed that it's doing 3-point turn now. So this is something new. We haven't seen that before. So it's pretty advanced. Looks like it's a pretty advanced feature now, much better than it used to be, like with the original Smart Summon rollout. So I'm waiting to see more videos. Didn't have time to see too many yet, but I'm sure there will be a ton of videos in the upcoming days and weeks.
Omar, how much have you tested this software so far?
Not too much. I drove from LAX to Santa Monica, stopped at In-N-Out along the way. So did several.
Omar, your connection is a little poor, but let's continue with Dallas. That's fine. Dallas, what's on your mind?
Drives.
Yeah, definitely excited for the summon to go wide. Curious, I guess, about Tesla can answer this. How big is the early access group, and is that something that's public knowledge?
About Tesla?
I don't know the exact size of the group, and it's not publicized. In fact, many of those who are probably part of that group may not be even publicizing this because in the past there used to be a non-disclosure agreement for early access beta testers. I don't think it's in effect anymore, but still, some people are not reporting that they're participating in this. And also for very early access beta testers, there was a requirement not to participate in third-party tracking systems like, TSLA and so forth. So many of them are not showing up on TSLA and other, publicly available tracking websites. So it's really hard to tell. I'm guessing many of those who are like, known YouTubers will show up, and we'll see their videos and reports. And it's happening already.
Dallas?
Yeah, so far the videos I've seen, it's night and day compared to the old summon. I'm excited for someone to go drop it off in a Costco parking lot on a Sunday afternoon and see how it does.
Dallas, can you speak to the night and day comments?
Yeah, I've only seen one clip of it working. I just know there's not a whole lot of content out there on it yet. I know there's going to be a ton of it here soon, but the clip I saw was comparing what people are, calling ultrasonic summon versus the actually smart summon, and I mean it truly is night and day. It looks like a person driving the car versus, you know, a car that's driving over curbs and stopping randomly in the road.
I reposted a couple of clips from AI Driver, which were pretty interesting. One was showing the 3-point turn. The other one was like the car when it did the full roundabout automatically, um, just how it was supposed to do. So that was kind of interesting.
About Tesla, are there two different updates going out to hardware 3 and hardware 4?
I'm not sure if there is a hardware 3. I think it's probably just hardware 4 initially. On Tesla 5, there is only one car listed for this update so far, and it's hardware 4. Sometimes the early access group may get different versions slightly, or or targeted for different cars, just um, because Tesla wants to see their videos, I guess. But so I don't know if the hardware 3 is supported yet. I haven't seen the confirmation.
Omar, do you think hardware 3 will be supported for this update?
I'm sure it will be supported. I mean, hardware 3 can already do smart summon with ultrasonic sensors. So I don't see the reason why the video vision-based wouldn't be able to do that. It's not much more difficult, or it's not even much more dangerous to do it, because it's very low speed travel, and it's I think traveling at the higher speeds is more dangerous, where the accuracy is more important. But here, I'm pretty sure we'll have it for hardware 3 as well. I just don't know how soon.
About Tesla, what's the kind of feedback that you've heard about the update that went to both hardware 3 and hardware 4? I believe that was 12.5.1.3, right?
No, that was 5.1.3 was exclusive for hardware 3, and that 1.5 was exclusively for hardware 3. So there haven't been any recent updates, as I remember, that would go. Well, actually, 12.4 I think went to both, but 12.5 were all specific to hardware specific.
Okay, so the question then is, what's the kind of feedback that you've heard about 12.5 on hardware 4 versus hardware 3 so far?
Well, based on what I've seen so far, is like, it's it definitely behaves as 12.5 on the hardware 3. It's also smooth. It's very more confident than previous versions. It's just more accurate, more precise in most activities. But on the other hand, many say it's not exactly the same as hardware 4. So hardware 3 is might still be subpar at this point, because it's not using the same model. Once they fit the same model, it probably will improve. But so far, from what I've read, is it's just it's very good. It's much better than previous versions. It's definitely better than 12.3 that most hardware 3 cars are coming from. But for those who have both cars, there is there is some difference, some noticeable difference at this point. I only have hardware 4 with 12.5. I'm still waiting to get on my hardware 3 car. My wife's actually Model Y, so hopefully, if it will arrive, I will be able to compare it myself, having two cars with similar versions. But I can tell you that 12.5 compared to 12.3 is night and day.
So you said your wife's Tesla has hardware 3, is that right?
Yes, but I'm still on 12.3.
Gotcha. Can you speak to the differences between 12.5 and 12.3 since you've tested both?
Well, it's mostly from my impression. I mean, 12.3 is pretty good as far as, I can drive for, I drove more than 100 miles without much intervention, let's put it this way, with intervention limited to sometimes initiating a lane change or adjusting the speed. But other than that, it's pretty smooth most of the time. However, it does make occasional mistakes. But the difference to me is mostly in the way how it drives, how smooth it is, how accurate it is in making turns, how it makes the decision. For example, if it decides to make a turn, it's committed to it. Like 12.3 has much more hesitation or undecidedness sometimes, and it also makes more mistakes. The typical mistake that 12.3 is making for me is sometimes it would decide to change a lane, but it would not commit. It would start moving, then it would shake back, and then finally it would take it sort of like this dance, lane change dance, as someone called it. Um, that's happens pretty often on 12.3, 12.3.6. But in 12.5, I didn't see that at all. Occasionally I saw some hesitation, but it's completely not at the level as the previous version had. So that's also how many things that, both versions do finally do the roundabouts here. So like in version 11, it was always a problem. Like it would fail most of the time, or at least 50% of the time. Version 12 has fixed that. So both are doing this pretty good. But again, I feel that there is less hesitation and more and smoother, like how it accelerates, how it stops if there is let's say, a red light ahead or some traffic jam. The way it slows down, 12.3 would do braking mostly at the last moment. 12.5 would do it much more gradually, and so it's like it does feel like it's limo chauffeur or something. So it's no longer a student driver to me. It's definitely a more professional driver. But sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it's doesn't follow the speed limit the way I would like it. So there are still some issues.
How often?
I'm sorry, didn't hear. How often what?
How often do you find yourself intervening?
I don't remember when I had a last really critical intervention, meaning that it would do something really bad if I didn't intervene. Sometimes there are interventions that do look critical, but maybe they are not critical. But I didn't want to take a chance. Like it was. I thought I wasn't comfortable with doing some turn or not committing too quickly, and I would intervene, which doesn't necessarily mean it's a critical intervention because I just didn't want to test it. But most of the interventions are just comfort level intervention. Let's say I'm in the left lane and I see there is a car coming behind, and my car is not quick enough to change the lane, so I may initiate the lane change myself, and that happens, relatively often. some, other scenarios would be the speed. Like if I go on automatic speed selection, sometimes it could be even too fast. Like there were cases when the car would want to drive, let's say, above in 25 mile zone to drive 35 or more. And over here, it's not really a good idea. You can get a ticket easily. So on the other hand, sometimes it would go way below the speed limit. So I have to tap accelerator to make it go faster. So that still happens in the 12. This is 12.5.1.3, right? That's on the hardware 4. But most of those interventions are just, comfort level interventions. And I honestly don't remember when there was a really critical one last time.
Thank you for all the colorful color on the topic. I really appreciate the comprehensive explanation. Scott?
Yeah, I have my 23 Model S with 12.5.1.3, and I've been driving FSD a lot. This last weekend, I went from just north of Milwaukee, where I live, down to Illinois, a suburb of Chicago, 100 and some miles, and basically let it drive the entire way. I remember sitting there just driving and like, have I had any interventions, or did I need to interfere? The only time that I had to really do any interfering is maybe an accelerator pedal press if it drives a little slow, but for the most part, it did pretty good. And then if I changed my mind, like if I was on my route and I wanted to stop somewhere, I usually would try to add the destination, but sometimes I have to like disengage to get it to, and then I finish driving. But basically, I can go parking lot to parking lot. Then yesterday or this last week, when we went to Madison, took it all the way down to Madison and back, and it's so comfortable. It's amazing. So um, I
And
think
that version now sucks compared to 12.5.3.
so. I can't wait until it goes parking spot to parking spot. In some cases, you can do that, but most times, like once you get in the parking lot, you have to like take over than just park.
Well, you can use auto park.
True, and I did. I actually did that yesterday in one spot. But sometimes it's like searching around, and so I'll just park here. But you're right.
Yeah, I mean, you can literally turn it on now from a parking spot, or now even summon it out of the parking spot to you, turn it on, have it drive there, then auto park. You could literally go the entire day without moving the wheel in some cases.
But highways are not on FSD still yet, right? When do you think that's going to happen?
Well, they are on FSD. They haven't taken the highway stack end to end yet, but honestly, it's still performing really well. It's still just doing amazing things on the highway. When they take it end to end, that's just going to be another leap forward. So the team is really doing crazy work here. And they got Cybertruck FSD coming down the line. They got highways end to end. They got some pretty big updates. So I think probably what happened with 12.5.1.5, people said, oh, why isn't it rolling out to more people? I think they just got done with 12.5.3. And they said, well, why waste time fixing 12.5.1.5 when we've already got a newer version that has a lot of these fixes? Let's just focus on rolling that out. So I think it's going to roll out to everybody, hardware 4, hardware 3, and people are going to be pretty happy with it.
Dallas.
Yeah, on the highway stack merger, I'm actually noticing that more now than ever, and I think we've touched on this in the past, where the versions have just gotten so good on end to end that the somewhat legacy version, if you will, on the highway is just becoming noticeably different than what we're used to. But where I notice it the most right now is highway overpasses. So 635 to 75, which is Dallas's massive exchange. You come into these turns and you're going, 75 or whatever, the car struggles to kind of realize, hey, I probably shouldn't take that overpass turn at 75 miles an hour, and it'll come in, close to that speed. I'm hoping these things are what will be addressed in that highway stack merger, but curious if anyone else notices anything like that.
About Tesla?
I didn't have too many trips lately. In fact, I'm going on a long out-of-state trip tomorrow, so I will be traveling for the next couple of weeks, so I may not be showing up in the spaces. Sorry about that. Will not have much internet access, especially when we take a cruise. But in my impression is, I don't know if they changed something in the old highway stack or not, or is it just I'm getting used to it or what? But to me, it looks it works actually better than it used to be. I don't know why. Maybe it's just uh, incidental or something. There is one huge improvement that yes, it is the old stack, but it's now hands-free. So I can drive hands-free for many, many miles, and that's really a big improvement. So even with the old stack, it's the last trip I had. It surprised me. It even went through the toll plaza on its own, so I didn't even have to intervene at the toll plaza, which is kind of strange. It's a easy pass, so I didn't have to, stop there for too much. But it slowed down. It went through. And here in Ohio, it's like it's still the old. It's not a separate lane. It's just you have to go through the toll booth even with Easy Pass, and it did it on its own. It was kind of funny.
Well,
So
what version was that? The last time I tested FSD was on 12.3.6, and it didn't handle the toll booth. It was way too fast. It didn't slow down enough. And what version were you testing?
well, that was the latest for hardware 4. So this is 12.5.1.3. But it's supposed to have the old stack for the highway, and toll booth would be, I guess. Well, I don't know. Is it still considered the highway because it's still on the highway, but it slows down for it? So I don't know. Don't remember what was the visualization at that point. And that was cars in front and behind, so it probably was following the traffic anyway. But it went through the gates and everything, and it's just was interesting.
When do you think we're going to see end-to-end on the highway?
How long ago did they promise? I don't know. I don't know
I think it was
what's.
supposed to be. It's supposed to be V11. It was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, they kept promising it for a long time. I think I mentioned my theory about this. Well, no, it's not actually the theory, but anyway, I think it probably will be this year, but I don't know, next week, next month, or at the end of the year. This should probably be around October 10. They should probably have it finally on a single stack, but you never know. You don't know what their priorities are. They may have a lot of other things to work on.
Gotcha. So it's a matter of priority. It's not a matter of it not performing well enough as the existing stack on the highway.
We don't know
Well,
that, and they're not
if it
telling.
was better than the existing stack on the highway, we'd be using it. The fact that we're not using it tells you that they think the current stack is better.
Yeah,
Now, I don't think this is an insurmountable issue, but obviously at highways, it's very high speed. A small error can be a big problem. So they want to make it really perfect. Just like the last time they took highways onto the FSD stack from the autopilot stack.
Okay, great. About Tesla, what percent of the US Canada fleet has hands-free at this point?
I'll have to look at the latest stats just to give you a more accurate more accurate assessment. So let me check into this. We'll probably post later today or tomorrow the diagram with the more accurate graph. It's not easy to calculate because I have to go through each version, see what's how many are in each country. There is no easy way to do this at Tesla 5, for example. So I have to manually go into every single version and write down the numbers. Um, Plus, we don't know how many are actually using it. So that's the biggest unknown.
Thank you for everything you do. Is it fair to say, though, that most of the fleet is still on 12.3.6?
For definitely for hardware 3, most of the fleet is for sure is still on the older version. For hardware 4, my impression is that most people did get it, at least those who are using it actively. I even made a poll some time ago on just to see if someone hasn't received it. It's very small percentage. We're still waiting. So it seems to me that hardware 4 actually went to most hardware 4 FSD subscribers in US and Canada, but definitely not hardware 3.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Any other questions on 12.5, hardware 4, hardware 3, FSD, actually Smart Summon? Otherwise, we're going to change topics. Omar, any other thoughts on actually Smart Summon?
It's magic. When you see your Tesla drive without a driver for the first time and it's smooth and it's human-like and you're on the outside, it just clicks for you. It's like, wow, this is really going to happen. It was just as simple as that. We were just sitting there, and all of a sudden they sent out a software update. Now my Tesla can operate driverlessly on FSD within parking lots. That's all it takes. I was taking a shower. I come out of the shower, check my phone, software update available. I look and it says ass. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? And that's all it takes. One software update, and your car is now able to operate without a driver in the driver's seat. And we're going to see that continue onto city streets and highways as well eventually in the coming years.
Okay. I see we have 3 hands. Before that, Omar, question for you. Does anyone else on FSD find they often get stuck behind someone turning left as opposed to car anticipating this and getting into the right lane to go straight? Just tested FSD 12.5 and this happened often, says Jake McCombs. And Hustletown says, Hustletown, why don't you repeat what you said here in YouTube live chat?
I just wrote that I experienced this, especially early on, but there were more times than not when it would do the right thing. Like I'd get ready to hit the turn signal just to keep the flow of traffic going, and it already beats me to the punch. And I'm like, that's new. And then it would just continue to do the right thing in these situations. But I really do think it's situational. But I have experienced it.
I mean, oftentimes now it's really good at going around a car. I was just on this latest version and some car was turning left in front of me and it went around them. And I got that on video. It was actually a left turn lane though, so that part wasn't good, but it did go around the car. So I think everybody has different issues that are specific to their area. One of the toughest issues is really figuring out what lane to be in because every city is different in terms of what their lane topology looks like and what's a good lane to drive in and what isn't. So that remains one of the most challenging pieces, but they do seem to be making big improvements.
Edward.
Yeah, hi, Yaman. Thanks. And I was just wondering because, I mean, can anybody just do it anywhere in any parking lot? I mean, there's no regulations at all. I can see there being kind of some sort of problems here if something happens. I mean, or is it just under regular accident situation?
Actually, Smart Summon was released 5 years ago, so it hasn't really been an issue, primarily because people don't use it because it's so bad. So if people start using it more, then it's possible you could have more crashes. So you just have to watch closely, watch your car, make sure you can see your car physically and can see what it's doing. Lift up your finger to intervene and stop it. And also the live cameras will show up on your phone. So look at the car, look at the cameras on your phone, and you still need to be responsible for it. So don't just let it go drive around and like run someone over. Watch it closely and still intervene just like you were in the car, except you're not in the car.
Dallas.
Yeah, something I haven't heard touched on yet that'll be interesting is kind of how they figure out the nuances of parking lot driving. Um, Driving on the roads obviously very different than parking lots. In some ways, it's even harder in parking lots because there's these subtleties that we all do, but we don't think about. Like someone's walking in front, they look at you. We typically flash our headlights or some sort of way of saying no, go ahead. It'll be really interesting to see now that they're getting into the autonomy area of parking lots without a person in the car. The person's going to look up and be like, there's no one in that car. That's weird. So having some sort of system for the car to figure out, okay, if I flash my headlights one time, most people assume that means go ahead. And that's the kind of stuff I'm looking forward to and how that transfers over to the robotaxi.
Jimmy.
Yeah, I had a question. Do you think states will pass a line of sight law like they do with drones? Because legally, you're not supposed to be able to fly a drone, even in FPV, unless you have a spotter watching and they can actually see where the drone is. Why wouldn't they apply this to a vehicle that weighs 4,000 pounds?
Omar. Omar. About Tesla.
Well, here's my guess. By the time they pass the rules like that, Tesla will be autonomous, and that will not apply anymore.
What rules are you talking about? Are you talking about like new laws or legislation or something like that?
He's talking about line of sight, just like you have to see the drone you're operating.
I mean, yeah, you're supposed to, be within the line of sight of your drone. Sometimes people don't. Same thing with summon, you just got to watch it and be ready to take over. But the thing is getting so good. Like I was in the LAX parking lot, which is not an easy parking lot. There's people moving all over the place, people walking, people driving. And I wasn't really able to see it that well. I was looking at the camera on my phone and I was like, it just did it perfectly. It doesn't hit anything. It's getting so good. And this is the first version, right? So project this out a year. It's, they mentioned in the release notes, they're no longer going to require you to do a continuous push. They're working on increasing the range so you can summon your car from further away. I mean, we're really approaching driverless in some senses. I mean, it's driverless in the parking lot, and it's honestly good enough to do it. And I was just thinking yesterday when I was driving with it, this thing drives better than Waymo now. So just like Waymo, it didn't have any interventions at all on all of my drives. And that's not to say it'll never have interventions, but it didn't have any interventions last night. And it was smoother, it was more human-like, it was more assertive. It's amazing to see them come from being far more interventions than Waymo to actually leapfrogging them, being able to match the reliability of the drive in many cases, but also leapfrogging them in terms of the driving feel. And this is an insane difference that we're seeing. Like it is just less annoying to ride in. You're really starting to see the benefit of all that fleet data that Tesla has. Even a company like Google can't match the power of training on real human driving.
Chansu.
Omar, did you have a chance to use it on like parking lots that have no lane markings or anything, like a temporary like concert hall event parking lots?
Yeah. Yeah, so, first of all, I noticed that the FSD itself drives a lot better in parking lots and even underground parking structures. It's not perfect, so when I tried it at LAX, I couldn't figure out how to get down. It was like kind of a very narrow opening. So there's still some work to do there, but it works just like FSD. It's the FSD stack that's running Smart Summon, and it's able to navigate parking garages, even indoor or underground parking garages, pretty impressively well.
Edward.
Yeah, Omar, I think you misunderstand what I was kind of talking about. When it comes to Smart Summon, I used it years ago too, 4 years ago, and was messing around in a buddy of mine's parking lot and stuff like that. But I mean, how are they even allowed? Isn't that really considered level 5 anyway? I mean, nobody's behind the wheel. My question is
Well,
it because it's private property?
the government only regulates what's allowed on public roads. On private property, you can do pretty much anything you want, right? So what happens in the parking lot is not the concern of the government. Um, Now, I think if this was unsafe and people were getting run over, NHTSA could take some action. But it hasn't been a problem in the last 5 years, and it's probably not going to be a major problem in the next 5 years.
Edward.
Yeah, but it's not your property. That's my thing. I mean, if you're in a mall, for example, that property is owned by somebody. Don't they have to technically give permission to Tesla to be able to do that? To me, that there's something up with that. It doesn't make any sense legally.
I mean, you know, you can think about it like you've got some feature, let's say on an Audi, that backs it up to get out of tight spots or whatever. The parking lot owner is just, they own a parking lot, right? And the car is a car. They've welcomed cars there if it's a public parking lot to come to the mall or to come do whatever. And people can drive their cars there as they choose. There really isn't any difference between Summon and a human driver. The only difference is the driver standing outside the car rather than inside the car. But someone can use FSD in a parking lot today, and people do, and it'll navigate that parking lot. So it's really not any different. We're just going to start in parking lots where it's low speed, it's easy. Then we're going to move on to maybe city streets and highways, and just incrementally make the driverless work in more and more places.
Okay, great. I see we have a lot of hands. Lots of interest in this topic, and we're going to continue to talk about it. But first, a quick shout out to our sponsors. Here we go. The links, both of the links are at the top of your screens. I recommend people check out our sponsors. They make this space possible. First, Joa. TSLA Live is proudly sponsored by Joa, your go-to source for premium Tesla accessories. Joa offers everything you need to enhance your Tesla ownership experience. Don't miss out on our special offer for Space listeners. Use the coupon code TSLA Live at checkout for an exclusive discount. Thank you, Joa, for supporting the Tesla community. And our second sponsor, Paymore. Are your old electronics collecting dust? Visit Paymore and turn them into cash. Paymore buys, sells, trades, and recycles electronics because Paymore believes the best technology doesn't have to come at the cost of our planet or your wallet. Visit one of the 100+ stores near you or visit paymore.com. This is at the top of our screens. Jimmy.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm very skeptical of these things because I've used Smart Summon in the past. I haven't used the new one. But my question is, why, as a FSD user, should I use Summon? If the range is short, I take all responsibility. My insurance, like Tesla takes no responsibility whatsoever if anything happens with this feature. It's all up to you, like the user. So, like, why would you take that risk for 250 feet when you can just walk to your vehicle?
Well,
Dallas. Omar, go ahead.
Well, yeah, you're correct. You do assume all liability. So if you're going to be upset that something happened to your car, then don't turn it on or watch it very carefully. But there are some times when people want to use it. Let's say it's raining, for example, their car's over there. It's just another step towards autonomy, right? Okay, well, let's enable the car to operate driverlessly within parking lots, within, 250 feet. Okay, now let's extend it to 500 feet. Okay, now let's say, certain areas that are pre-mapped, maybe they can do it, so on and so forth. So, yeah, it is your risk. You still have to watch it. If you're not comfortable with that, then don't turn it on. But if you do have something to use it for, let's say, your car's over there, you need it to come to you, maybe you just think it's cool, maybe you want to show somebody. If you want to use it, then it's now there for people to use.
Dallas.
Yeah, question, Omar. Do you see the fact that like Elon and these other Tesla AI guys are posting about the release of this feature? Do you see that as a reason to believe that it's coming out sooner than past software that's come out only for early access, than weeks, if not months later, the wide rollout has come?
I have no idea what the pace of the rollout is going to be, and frankly, they don't either. So it's completely opaque. Um, when it's ready to go out, then it goes out. And as much as people try and look up at the stars and the movement of the planets and talk about all kinds of things, we just don't know. Um, but I'm hopeful that everybody's going to get it soon. We'll see what the reality is.
Lad.
Hey there, first time here. Just wanted to get kind of two thoughts out there and questions
Can you
from
guys hear
you guys.
Plaid?
Um,
I can
so
hear him.
Can
I
you
can
hear me?
hear.
I'll be right back.
yeah, so in terms of City Streets summon, I would assume that kind of it has a prerequisite of unsupervised FSD first. Kind of just want to get your thoughts on if that will kind of come together, or if you think unsupervised ass on City Streets is something that comes later. And then also as well with Banish, I think we were kind of all under the impression that they would come together. And I think one of the main data points we would need to see how soon it's coming is how often the car is self-parking itself just on FSD. I wanted to see what your experience has been recently with 12.5, and now if you have anything with 12.5.3 regarding whether it's parking itself at the end of drives.
Well, the auto park basically never fails. It always parks correctly. That's really the parking stack. Now, FSD at the end of a drive doesn't park, it pulls over. So it'll pull over. If there's a parking spot it can pull over into, it'll pull over, but it doesn't even really park. It just kind of throws itself in the spot a little bit. So the auto park is really the solution to park. So they need to kind of smooth out that integration a little bit. Right now, what you have to do is hit the brake and then engage auto park. In terms of the expansion of Summon, so let's say you have a car rental service and you can rent a car with FSD, but you have to go pick up the car somewhere, right? Well, now let's say they said, okay, we're actually going to allow the car to operate driverlessly and come to somebody who rented the car from up to 1 mile away or up to 2 miles away. And the car has to drive 30 miles an hour. It can only use back roads or whatever. It has to put its flashers on. But, we can just start with that. Or, okay, these cars can drive from, let's say, 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. when there's very low traffic. So, okay, you can send the car out, go rent it to somebody. And then when the rental period's over, 12 a.m. to 4 a.m., it can come drive back to you without a driver. So that could be, another way to sort of incrementally roll it out. And then, it looks like it's working. Okay, great. Now let's make it, 20 miles. Let's make it 50 miles, 100 miles. Let's make it not just after midnight, but even during rush hour. And you can, while you're doing this, at each step, review the data, see what the problems are, and make fixes before expanding. Similar to what we see with Waymo, where they start with a ton of restrictions and gradually they're peeling back those restrictions, right? So first they didn't operate on highways. Then they started running on highways with the human safety driver. Then they said, okay, we're actually going to run some cars without a driver on highway, but only employees are going to be able to call it, right? This is pretty similar to Tesla's process. Employees, early access, main customers. So basically, our cars are just going to keep getting more and more autonomous.
So, and just a quick follow up on those, I think there's a distinction on Banish to be made. If you remember early in the V12 releases, we were seeing cars park themselves front into parking lots and angled spots, and Auto Park right now is just backing in, and I'm sure they have a version internally that can drive right in, but I think the amount we're seeing the car park itself in a parking lot, front in just on the FSD stack without doing the auto park is what's important for Banish, because that will really be what is at the end of the drive without that human intervention. But I guess my question on expanding AS was more about the timeline between unsupervised FSD and the ability for AS to go on city streets. I feel like those two would go hand in hand.
I mean, the thing is not making any mistakes here in Los Angeles. It hasn't made any mistakes yet. Well, it did make a right turn from a left turn lane. That was the one mistake it's made. But it didn't cause a crash. It did it in a safe way. It turned right into the second lane, similar to what a human would do if they realized they were in a wrong lane. So we're probably, I think, a lot closer to supervised FSD than people realize. The framework of end-to-end training on these massive compute clusters is basically just working amazingly well. And it's consistently delivering big jumps in performance. Like, I was so happy with 12.513. It was doing all my drives perfectly. I was not asking for a new version. And they're like, oh, by the way, completely unexpected, here's a new version that drives significantly better and has significantly fewer interventions than even that version. So we're really, when you look at, for example, the Cortex facility, XAI just brought up their 100,000 GPUs. They're going to double that to 200K. That Grok model that they're training there, I think, is going to be pivotal to solving self-driving, especially when you look at the vision capabilities and the audio capabilities of that Omni model. And I think, the Cortex facility in Texas, 100,000 GPUs, you can pretty much do the math, right? If this much training yielded these kinds of results, doing these things, making the model larger, bringing up 100,000 more GPUs, continuing to bring in more data, it's going to continue to get better and better. That's why I'm working on really importing data directly from the cars now, because it's getting beyond our ability to measure it with individual drives. We really need to look at aggregate statistics because we're getting into the realm of more than 1,000 miles per critical disengagement.
Quick announcement. At the top of your screens is a link to yesterday's Spaces summary. These summaries are 5 to 10 bullet points, and they do a good job of saving patrons 2 hours. So if you don't have time to listen to every space in full, I recommend signing up for the Tesla Live summaries on Patreon. The link is at the top of your screens. Shansu.
Hey, Omar, if you need more data from Canada on your project, let me know. Happy to feed you all the data.
Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
Yes, a comment about the question earlier about why you would want to use something. As someone with some mobility issues, I I've been looking forward to Summit for a long time. It's a little hard for me to get very far in the parking lot, especially I live in Indiana where the winters can get a little nasty walking through the snow and the ice. To have a car come up to me when it's raining really hard or there's snow and ice on the ground would be a game changer for me.
Omar, did you want to respond to Chansu?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I'll make data, make the information public if anyone wants to contribute. We'll possibly compensate people for contributing data, and the data won't be entirely public. We'll have some public stats. But we're basically gonna try and charge Wall Street $100,000 a year or something to get access to the raw data, and then individual contributors would be compensated for the data they provided from those funds.
What's the timeline on this?
Well, knowing me, probably never, because I
2
tend
weeks.
to, yeah, I tend to get bored and forget about it. But I'm thinking maybe if we actually get a bunch of developers from the community and get people to all work on it, make a little open source, Tesla team, there's enough smart people in the community that we could make it happen.
For those who are hearing about this for the first time, can you summarize the differences between what you're trying to do and Tesla FSD Tracker?
Well, I want to pull data directly from the cars on how their drives are doing, where they're going. Tesla FSD Tracker has been the only way for people to look at the data. And having a system that's based on certain people submitting their subjective reports of the drive is an inherently flawed system. Ideally, you want to be pulling live telemetry directly from the vehicles themselves and analyzing that and providing footage and statistics. People don't believe me that it really is able to do most of the drives curb to curb without an intervention. Is it always perfect? No. But I would like to show in the data what is actually happening. I think if we act, and the fundamental idea is FSD is available. Anyone can go get a car with FSD. So the performance is easily measurable by anybody. And any independent third party should be able to recreate the same data set just by getting a Tesla and measuring themselves. So no other self-driving car company has this. Nobody else is going to give their car to somebody to go do independent testing. We can go do that with Tesla, and we can actually measure exactly what it is and exactly how it's performing over time and understand all the nuance in the data, right? The other day I had a drive, zero intervention drive, but there was one moment where it kind of hesitated a little too much as it was crossing an intersection. And I looked at the video later, I saw there was a pedestrian walking behind me. So, okay, if they're behind me, why does it really matter? Things like that, right? There's a lot more nuance in the data. It's not just interventions, it's not just miles, it's a lot of different things. And Tesla actually has a set of APIs that allow us to configure the car to upload data directly to my server in real time and give us real time data on FSD. Every time someone turns FSD on or off, you can get a notification of that.
Very good, thank you. We have other things to talk about, but any other questions, comments on FSD, please request to speak. Jimmy.
Yeah, what do we have to do to get Tesla to mass roll out an FSD version and not pause it at the 1 to 5% mark? Because I know that we're kind of nerds in here and we like to talk about version numbers, but the general public, they don't know what version of FSD they're on. And so they just drive and they are like, I have FSD. and what is it, 86% of people are on 12.3.6. So what is stopping Tesla from fixing and pushing out things, even if it's not final, so people have better experiences? Like, I'm really flawed by this.
Look, I mean, things are going to be very different now with millions of customers. When I started testing FSD in 2020, they'd send us like an update every day, right? And that was fine back then. Now there's millions of people. What you're seeing even with 12.5.1.5 is a lot of hardware 3 customers are saying, "Hey, this is actually worse than 12.3.6. I'm having a new issue that I didn't have before." And I think most users are very happy. I've had pretty good experiences. But there are some people who are saying, "Hey, this sucks. This is worse." Even though, of course, no nag is great, there's a lot of better things about it. You want to make sure that it's a continual forward motion, that people are just seeing the software get better and better. That requires doing a ton of validation to make sure it's safe, it's not a regression. You got to deploy it in shadow mode. And honestly, they're still learning how to work with this new sort of end-to-end framework where it's a lot less predictable what the model is going to do compared to the code, which, always kind of runs the same way. So this is just kind of how it's going to be. The way I like to think about it is 12.3.6 is the main version that's out right now, right? The version that the majority of the fleet is running on is the current version. So if somebody's on 12.3.6, they're actually up to date, you know? And the people who are on 12.5, it's starting to go out slowly, but you have to roll it out in a very careful way. And it's just going to be like this, unfortunately, because the consequence of rolling something out widely and causing a string of crashes could shut down the program. So they're getting all the data they need, they're rolling it out, but they want to make sure it's a real continual forward motion. We're going to not see more than probably one major update a quarter. And I think looking at this 12.5.3, people coming from 12.3.6 to this are going to be very satisfied. And I think they're going to release it at a time when all the kinks are truly worked out, not just in California or in major markets, but really all across the country.
Jimmy.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with a lot of that, because if Tesla has shadow mode and they can see what full self-driving is, why don't they just take a small, minute group of people, make them sign like an NDA, say you're special, you'll get every update, we'll take your data, and then if it's not causing critical issues, roll it out to every single person out here without pause. That way, everybody's always up to date on everything. Even if there's other things, like I know you mentioned, and I've seen other YouTubers say, "Oh, it's worse." Okay, but now we're not collecting enough data to why it's worse because it's only out to 5% of the fleet. Like, why wouldn't we just push? I still don't get why we don't just push forward and deal with the issues head on instead of just waiting and then release it. Because the more we release it, it's just like the iPhone. There was 1,000 people on the iPhone and they were like, "Hey, look there's not many negative comments." But as more people got their hands on it, obviously negative things start to happen because more people are using it. Like, why aren't we doing that?
Look, we are allowed to push software onto public roads, or Tesla is, because they've demonstrated competence. They never have messed it up. One time they had one update that was applying automatic emergency braking too much. They pulled that update. That was the one time I can think of. They never mess it up. The minute we start messing it up, we lose the ability to iterate entirely. And people will die. People who have people who care about them will die waiting for this.
Yeah.
So it's important.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Jimmy. speaking of people dying, the summary at the top of your screens is to die for. It saves 2 hours of your time, only a couple of minutes to read for each Spaces summary. So for $10 a month as a Tesla patron, you can save up to 50 hours a month. So if you value your time 20 cents per hour, I recommend signing up for the Tesla patron tier. Also, Spaces tier on Patreon, which used to be $5 a month, is no longer available for new signups. It was only there as support for the space. These people signed up for the Spaces patron without expecting anything in return over the last 6 months, and therefore they are now grandfathered into the Tesla patron. For every Spaces patron, which was $5 a month, they're now going to get daily summaries and also Tesla weekly updates. There are not going to be any new signups for Spaces patron, but if you cancel, then you have to join at the $10 a month tier going forward. So all Spaces patrons are grandfathered into Tesla patrons going forward. Great. Any other comments on this topic? FSD, please request to speak. Otherwise, we're going to switch topics. Let's talk some Elon and Brazil. There's a lot of commotion going on. Okay, before that, about Tesla?
Just to add to what Omar was saying, sometimes it feels like, okay, a very small percentage got the version. Let's say this hardware 3, as was mentioned, like almost less than 5% of the fleet. But if you look at who got that, for US and Canada, where FSD is only used, it's more like 8%. And if you count only hardware 3 cars, then it's about 12% of them got. And now if you exclude everyone who is not using FSD, then you realize that it's almost a quarter of the fleet of those who are eligible and actually using FSD on hardware 3 have received that update. We're talking about tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of cars. So it's a pretty big sample. So it's not, it might be misleading sometimes to see the numbers that Tesla finds. Oh, it's just, small number. But it's really a big number if you extrapolate this to the entire fleet and especially take into account who is eligible and who this applies to. That's one point. And then the other point is it's really important for Tesla developers because it's still in development. They don't call this beta anymore, but it's still being developed, actively improved. And, we have new versions, new models coming out all the time. So for them, it's really critical to have different versions in the fleet so that they can compare them back to back in real life with the real feedback from drivers. In shadow mode, you don't get that feedback. You can only see the discrepancies between what the driver decided to do and what the car decided to do. But maybe both were right. Maybe it's not necessarily an indication of a fault if there was a discrepancy. But when the driver really intervenes, then it's usually a much stronger signal to communicate back to Tesla. So it is important for them to have it live and to have it on the fleet, but not on the entire fleet, so that they can compare the telemetry. So that's an important point.
I see we have a couple more hands, man. The interest in FSD content is incredible. Like people really want to understand this technology. Just a quick word of thank you to Drew Soul for the super chat on YouTube. From now on, super chats will be featured on the thumbnail for the episode. So thank you, Drew. And also Anthony Rustash for becoming a member of the Tesla tier. As I just mentioned, Tesla tier gets daily summaries of each episode, saving you 2 to 3 hours a day. Omar, then Jimmy.
Yeah, you know how many cars Waymo has? 700. Tesla has 6 million. So learning how to manage software updates for 6 million cars, that's Tesla's moat. They are managing a bigger self-driving fleet than any other company on earth. And they're practicing, they're learning, they're getting better too. They'll get faster. They'll learn how to validate faster and release faster over time. But another really important point that about Tesla made is A/B testing. So I need people to really take the time to understand FSD data. You see so many people who came into Tesla on the EV side, and they were amazing at understanding the EV business. And they're just completely confused at how to understand autonomy and how to understand the numbers and what to look at. And one concept that we really need to drill down into people is there's a lot of noise, right? So when you're looking at something like interventions per mile, there's a lot of noise other than just the raw performance signal of how good the software is. For example, let's say the weather was really bad one month, right? And people were driving crazy. Let's say there was a hurricane or something. You might say, oh my God, our software really decreased in performance. But it could be that the software itself actually increased in performance overall. There was just an unusual weather event in the area. So it's really difficult to say, okay, is 12.5 even better than 12.3? Did we even improve, or are we actually getting worse? And it's really difficult to know if you're looking at last month's data compared to this month's data and trying to make a judgment. If you have a ton of cars running both versions out at the same time, then you can actually say, okay, how did 12.3 cars in Los Angeles compare to 12.5 cars in Los Angeles? Oh, wow, okay. 12.5 is actually doing better in most cases. Oh, look, there's a few cases 12.3 is actually doing better. Unprotected lefts and stop signs. Okay, let me actually take some of those clips and use it to make 12.5 better. So that A/B testing is really important.
Jimmy.
Yeah, I have a question for Omar. Does Tesla have like a deregistration of VIN numbers for vehicles that have either been destroyed or something so that their scope of FSD that is actually activated like doesn't show up in their numbers?
Well, I mean, obviously, if a car has been destroyed, it's not going to be adding any more FSD miles. It's not going to be sending up any more data. Tesla often gets a notification when it crashes. So, in most cases, yes, they are able to tell that a car has been destroyed.
All right. Any other questions, comments? No? Okay. Let's talk about Brazil. Omar, what in the world is going on? Um, a lot of people are talking about this. Can you give us a summary of what the situation is in Brazil? X is no longer accessible in Brazil from once unless if you use a VPN, which most people won't do that. So what does this mean for the future of X? What does it mean for the future of Tesla?
Yeah, pretty crazy situation. I'm not sure I'm filled in with all the details, but basically, as I understand it, the Brazilian government ordered X to remove some X accounts, including from members of Congress and an 11-year-old girl for posting content that they didn't like. And X said, we don't think this is a lawful order. Um, you're just kind of trying to censor your political opponents here. And they said, well, you better remove them or we're going to start arresting your employees in Brazil. And so X said, well, in that case, unfortunately, we can't take it down. We're going to have to just let them all go. So they let go of their entire ex Brazil team. And then the judge said, well, in that case, we're going to seize the bank accounts of Starlink in Brazil. And Elon said, what the hell? Starlink is a completely different company. And they said, well, we'll keep giving Starlink for free to schools and people who are using Starlink in Brazil just because we're nice since we don't have a bank account. And then they basically said, all right, well, you need to appoint a legal representative here in Brazil, or we're going to suspend we're going to basically ban X in Brazil. People won't be able to access it. And then they said, well, we're not going to name a legal representative. You're just looking for someone to sort of arrest and harass. They said, they've already sort of frozen the bank accounts of the last person who was the ex legal representative, even though she quit and is no longer with the company or was let go. They're still kind of going after her. So they're like, well, we don't really want to do that. And so they've banned X in Brazil. It's a big loss for the company. Brazil is 200 million people, almost 2/3 of the population of the United States. It's a major market. It's been a major market for X. So yeah, it just goes to show that free speech is not guaranteed all across the world. And maybe it would have been smart to just remove the accounts in Brazil and keep X up in Brazil, but I think Elon's making a stand here for free speech and just kind of making the point that, look, governments all over the world hate this. They hate that we can talk to each other freely and just say whatever we want. And it annoys the hell out of them, some of the things people say, because they know that it's true and they know it could destroy them if more people heard it and believed it. So I think they stood up for what's right. They could have easily just complied with the order. They don't believe it's lawful. I don't know enough about Brazilian law to have an opinion on whether it's lawful or not. But I'm hopeful that they'll find some way to work it out. Although that doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
So this is impacting SpaceX. Do you think it's going to impact Tesla going forward?
Well, it certainly makes you think as a Tesla investor, hey, SpaceX is getting hit here because of Elon and X. And they didn't do anything. It's just a completely different company that Elon happens to also own. So you think Tesla's going to be received warmly if they come into Brazil? Probably not. So there is clearly a negative impact to Elon's other businesses from standing up on this.
Jimmy.
So I have a strong opinion on this. This is a government attacking an individual, and they're going to use every company that he has to shut him down because of the free speech. Saying that you're going to arrest people who work for your company just to make an arrest is exactly the same thing as advertisers pulling out of X. Like, go away. We don't need that. So I wouldn't be surprised if X in the future makes some type of built-in VPN. And if you buy like premium or something, you would just get that VPN and you could connect to it. Again, I know they're pulling them from their app stores, but there are ways to go to like x.com. And I hope this ignites a little bit of fire under the X team so that they can make spaces work better on desktop versions and things like that.
Any other comments, questions on this topic? Please request to speak. Drew Soul says there's no chance of a Brazil gigafactory at this point. All right. We have a couple other things to talk about, about half hour to go. So there is a Reuters article about a new Model Y in China coming in Q1 2025. A new Model Y in China coming in Q1 2025 with a 6-seat option. Uzi, what are your thoughts on this?
Say Roadster or Model Y in China?
Model Y.
Well, that's great. I mean, the Chinese market's huge, and it seems like there's a lot of demand recently. But yeah, I'm probably not the best to talk about this.
Omar, what do you think?
Sorry, what did he say?
All right, let me read this article. I pinned it at the top of our screen. This is the Reuters article that was published this morning. That's kind of making the rounds. Tesla plans to produce a 6-seat variant of a Model Y in China from late 2025. Oh, sorry, late 2025, not Q1 2025. Okay. Two people with direct knowledge of the matter said, as the US automaker strives to increase the appeal of its best-selling yet aging EV. Tesla has asked suppliers to prepare accordingly for a double-digit increase of Model Y output at its Shanghai factory, said one of the people, who declined to be named as the plan is not public. Tesla did not immediately respond to requests for comments. It was not clear how Tesla would raise production at the plant, which is awaiting approval to expand 172 acres of former farmland. It has already seen a 6% on-year increase in domestic and overseas Model 3 deliveries during January to June, boosted by last year's launch of a renewed version. Tesla released the Model Y in 2020 and has been revamping it under Project Juniper, Reuters reported previously. That variant will seat 5 and will launch in early 2025 rather than this year, as initially planned, the second person said. The addition of a 6-seat variant underscores pressure in China from domestic rivals, whereas in the US, Tesla is prioritizing self-driving technology and robotaxi development. Interesting. Those rivals have unveiled at least 4 Model Y competitors this year, including the Envo L60 from NIO and 7X from Zeekr, with roomier interiors and at prices lower than those of flagship models. The Model Y crossover is the best-selling car in China among all power types, with January to June sales of 207,800 vehicles, though the Seagull sedan from BYD is catching up. Tesla expects its overall China sales to increase in the third quarter due to strong growth in smaller cities, even though it shrunk its sales force as part of global layoffs in May, pointing to improved profitability. Sales could also get a boost from the introduction of FSD, planned for China by year-end. Tesla sells a 7-seater Model Y in the US, but a cramped third row would make it unpopular in China, the people said. Interesting. It's not even large enough for a large-sized dog, one of the people said. Stay up to date with the latest, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Uzi?
I just searched up the average family size in China. According to Grok, it's 2.76 people. In America, it's 2.5. I also saw a figure saying that the birth rate is, or in better terms, the death rate is higher than the birth rate now in China. I don't know how accurate that is. I personally believe the statistics that come out of China outside of the commercial space aren't the most trustworthy. I think that overall this is a luxury play, and it makes me question how quickly the Cybertruck will be in China.
Yoda.
Yeah, do you know if the article mentions the configuration? Is it like a captive seat for the second row?
The article doesn't say anything, but that's the one that kind of pops in my head. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that third row is really useless. They're so small, even for kids to pop back there. So I think Toyota and other EV makers have the captains, and it's quite a popular format, even just to ride more comfortably for adults. So I think hopefully that's what they're doing.
Okay, great. All right. Yoda, any comments on FSD, actually Smart Summon, Elon's involvement with Brazil, its impact on SpaceX, Tesla, the topics that we discussed so far? Any comments? I know you just joined us.
Yeah, I think for Brazil, Elon still has a couple cards up his sleeves, namely, as Starlink proliferates, I think that's going to be what a lot of nations will want to provide connectivity for rural areas. Um, so I think that's still a leverage point. And then as autonomous cars are proven to be saving lives, there'll be some pressures for Brazil to adopt that. But again, those things are, a few years out. I'm excited, and will look forward to the Warner Brothers Studios demo. I think that's going to be quite exciting.
I was reviewing as I was generating the summary for yesterday's space, which is at the top of our screens. I noticed the data collection, extensive data collection, is not just in Warner Bros. Studio. It's also in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Yoda, what does this mean to you? And Omar, what kind of data do you think Tesla's collecting?
Yeah, maybe I'll go first real quick. Yeah, it just kind of occurred to me that a robo taxi also could be doing dry runs of a particular popular route, let's say 50 times, 100 times without a passenger, on the cost of Tesla before they start picking up real passengers in that particular route. If those data points allows Tesla to share 99.999 or however many decimal points of reliability. So, that wasn't a thought that I had before, but, I could see that's one way that could help with the regulators.
Thank you. Omar, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, after sitting in the backseat of my Tesla yesterday and watch it drive me around a parking lot, it seems obvious that they're going to be able to do a Cybercab demo with people sitting in the back seat. That's going to be the best self-driving that person has ever experienced. The most lifelike, the most human-like self-driving that person has ever experienced in the backseat of a car. So it seems like the demo is probably going to be a home run. These triggers to collect data from certain areas, it is pretty common. They're really just asking for footage from the area so that they can validate it, so that they can add examples to the training set if necessary. And it's exactly what you would expect if they were preparing to do a demo at the event.
What kind of
Omar,
data do you think? Yoda, go ahead.
Omar, do you think the demo should go end to end all the way to that real passenger actually downloading the app and sort of doing a real transaction, or is that sort of not necessary?
Um, we'll see. I mean, they could just launch it in the Tesla app and have you actually hail it from the Tesla app if you're at the event. That's certainly a possibility. But they could also just, have you get in without having to hail it. Or they could have a phone at the front of the line or something to show you the app and you push the button and then it comes.
What's your guess on the cost?
The cost? Cost to produce? Well,
Cost of the ride.
oh, well, I mean, the rides are going to be free at the event, obviously. In terms of long term, what they're going to be, that's going to be market dependent, I think, and fluctuate based on supply and demand. But generally, you should be able to underprice Uber and Lyft a little bit.
Omar, what kind of data do you think Tesla's collecting in San Francisco and Los Angeles?
Well, just video of people driving around along with the associated GPS information and the other sensors on the car, but primarily just video. And, okay, not just any video, but the needle in the haystack. Show me that video of that situation that makes the software mess up. And let me run some different models against it. Let's figure out how to make it work correctly every time.
Yeah. So basically, it's the same type of data. It's just more of it in Los Angeles and San Francisco. A lot more of it, right?
No. So they have what's called a trigger infrastructure. So they can post a list of triggers on their server. The car will then download the list of triggers and it'll save them. So think of it like a wanted poster. So Tesla can put out a wanted poster. Wanted stop signs. Wanted people running red lights. So they can even include a machine learning model that can be inferenced on the car. And then when that detection matches, then the trigger fires and that data gets saved to upload to them later when you're on Wi-Fi. So they can have a number of different triggers depending on what they're looking on. So today they may be focused on, the Warner Brothers studio or some area in San Francisco where they want to do a demo. But then tomorrow it may be Chicago, right? And it's like running a query on the fleet. It's like saying, "Hey fleet, do you have any of this?" And there's a lot of different types of triggers. A trigger could be something as simple as, okay, every time there's an intervention, that should be a trigger. But also even maybe you didn't intervene, but there was a pedestrian detection that was flickering. So it's like, okay, are they there or are they not? Save the data, upload that to us, and then we can sort of refine it. So you have all these different things, all these different criteria. One of them is a geofence. So, okay, if you're within this area. So you might use that, for example, let's say there's an intersection that's really tricky, like Chuck Cook's left. So you may say, hey, all Teslas that drive through this neighborhood, not just this street, but even the streets around it, if you happen to drive through that area, send us the footage. So there could be just some random car driving through Chuck Cook's neighborhood and, oh, oops, I went through that geofence. Let's send up that footage to them. So it's not that this is like a permanent thing. It's just that this is what they're asking the fleet for today. And the Warner Brothers thing's coming up. They're asking for extra data about that area.
I mean, I understand all that, but it seems to be an increased focus on LA and San Francisco, not just Warner Brothers studio, a couple of blocks, right?
Yeah. I mean, it could be that they're gearing up to target those locations for cybercab demos, maybe demo videos that they would show at the event, or maybe even a live robotaxi service. I mean, these are areas where Waymo operates. Certainly, the infrastructure exists there on a regulatory side to approve a Tesla system if it could match or exceed the performance of Waymo.
Yeah. So this is probably this recent development is probably the biggest evidence that we have that Tesla is going to go city by city, just like Waymo has been going the last 2 years, right?
No, I don't agree. I mean, it's just like innocuous, right? I mean, they use these triggers all the time. There's like thousands of them and they change from time to time. So it's an interesting data point, but you can't really jump to a conclusion and say, oh, they're going to, start a robotaxi service. It could just be that, they, I don't know, need more data from those areas. They're seeing some interventions. I don't know what the reason is, but it's hard to really infer their motive just from the fact that they put out a trigger saying send us data from these areas.
Okay. Any other comments on this topic? Please request to speak. Uzi, can we film tomorrow to record our deeper conversation one-on-one, and maybe Omar can join us if he's available after tomorrow's space?
Absolutely. What time are you available at? Well, actually, I'm available after 6.
Okay. Yeah, we can do it. If Omar, are you available after 6 o'clock Eastern? I guess 3 o'clock your time. Omar?
Tomorrow's not the best day. Maybe Thursday or Friday.
Okay. All right. We'll figure it out. Either Thursday or Friday. Was he okay?
Yeah, that should work. I wrote
Okay.
out a decent amount of what I was going to say, so it should be smooth. Hopefully.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, you do what you need to do, but I want it to be a conversation, not like you prepared and read it to us kind of thing. I know you have a forecast for your Optimus, so the conversation is going to focus on Optimus forecasts. And I know you follow this topic very closely. There's something that you want to share on your screen, as I understand it. So what did you do? Did you do like a forecast for 5-10 years out?
I did a forecast to put some funny photos in there too that are YouTube
Okay, good.
appropriate.
Good. So if you want to see this funny photos with an Optimus production forecast and a deeper conversation of the drivers of this forecast with Uzi and potentially Omar, this is going to be published on YouTube for our members first. They're going to get a 1-week advanced look into this video, just like we've done with Omar's video and Chris's Dirty Tesla's video as well. And this is going to be a 3rd edition of Deeper Conversations. Okay, great. Any other questions, comments? Omar, what else is on your mind? NVIDIA is down 9% today. What in the world is going on?
All that's on my mind is ass. I haven't even looked at NVIDIA.
Yoda, are you still holding NVIDIA stock? You buying the dip?
Yeah, to be clear, I really don't push the sell button.
Are you adding?
Not today. This is all I think temporal. There's some misinformation or misperceptions of Blackwell ramping. I think that's out there. Yeah, so I'm not concerned at all.
Uzi.
I sold some Amazon and bought under 110.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for the updates. Hey, there's a tweet that's going around, a video of a girl asking Alexa, why should I vote for Trump? And, Alexa says, I can't give any information on politics or what have you. The exact wording is. And then asks, why should I vote for Kamala Harris? And gets a different answer. Do you guys have Alexa? I asked a couple of my friends who have Alexas, and they didn't get that kind of different answers. Did anyone on the board? Do you guys have Alexa? Have you tried it?
I
Omar?
have not tried that, and I don't have an Alexa nearby.
Yeah. Wes?
Yeah, I just tried it like 3 minutes ago, and it gives the same answer
Can you
for
guys hear
both
Wes?
candidates. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Uzi, what did Wes say?
Something about his experience with Alexa.
You didn't hear it either? Okay. Hustle Town, did you hear anything?
No. After he, asked if we could hear him, he cut out immediately.
Yeah, there's a bit of a bug going on, I think, with the app. I'm not sure what's going on, but okay. Well, that's everything I want to cover today. Let's see if there's anything else. We talk about NVIDIA. There's some macroeconomic topics that we can hit tomorrow. Big report that's coming up, unemployment report that's coming up. Okay, Justin says he tried it with Alexa and he did not get the result in the video. Okay, so maybe the video is just false information. Tomorrow, we're going to talk a little about macroeconomics. And big report that's coming out on Friday. Friday's report is about the unemployment rate and jobs reports for August. And this is going to be very important for whether the Fed is going to cut 25 basis points or 50 basis points on September 18th. So it's a very, very closely watched report. If you want more information about macroeconomics, you can follow the macro analyst account. That is the co-host right now. That's where I care macro analysis. Amy says she will try with Alexa as well. And Amy says gives the same result for Trump and Harris. Okay, there we go. Any other questions, comments? Otherwise, Uzi, I'm going to reach out to you to schedule that one-on-one deeper conversation. Thank you very much, everybody. And I will chat with you tomorrow. Take care.